Hi, everybody. Thanks for jumping on to our Chronic Conditions collab podcast. I'm Mike,
And I'm Paige.
and we welcome you to our episode today, where Paige and I are going to be talking about relationships with partners, family, and how it's impacted or how they've supported our chronic conditions. At the beginning of our podcast, we like to do a little check in into how we're doing and then get into the topic.
Just as a reminder to everyone, Mike and I are not doctors. We're just sharing our personal experience and opinions. Today happens to be very subjective. And also very much related to where we're at right now. I just want to remind everyone that it's a journey. Mike and I are both in long term relationships. We both have worked on communication a lot, and we've taken a lot of time throughout our relationship with our partners to develop good communication and different skills together. And we realize that everyone who's listening is on a different path in a different part of their journey, and that we are here to support you no matter where you're at in that journey. So, whether you're at the same point as us, or you're even further along, or if you're just starting and you're not even in a relationship, it doesn't matter. We're here to support you with that, and we will be touching on throughout all of our episodes different points in our life, so it won't always be about this. So Mikey, how you doing? How was your week? How are you feeling?
Feeling good. Feeling good. I'm feeling the word I've been using is refreshed. Um been coming like came back from my trip to Portugal. Nice kind of 2 week vacation where I just unplugged, saw family, um, and didn't think about work or literally anything else. So uh feeling refreshed, got some energy back, and hopefully going to try and apply that to our podcast today. But Paige, how about yourself? How are you doing? How are you feeling?
That does sound refreshing. I feel like we can all use that unplug. Similar to you, I've been trying to unplug a little more and just tune more into my body and what it needs. I feel like there's a lot of over the past few months, I've just been like really starting to understand the bells and whistles that like go off in my body and when I need to pay attention and what I need to do in order to kind of stay in alignment and grounded and feeling good. The past couple weeks have been tough because I was doing so great. You know, the classic, like, I'm building up, I'm doing great. And then I had this week that was just brought me back to just some tough things. So, with my epilepsy. So definitely more auras and the stimulation was like killing me. So I just had to take a week to really reset and unplug, like you said. And I saw my craniosacral therapist, and we got my body, like my fluid and everything in the body moving again. So that felt really good. And had some really good conversations with my husband, Michael. So that was really good. Yeah.
Mhm. Similar, I think, to our last podcast, actually, when I had a similar kind of roadblock when I was feeling good and got slapped in the face with reality. So, if our listeners haven't listened to that podcast yet, I'd encourage you to go give that a listen. Um, but Paige, I mean, as much as you feel comfortable, would you mind kind of explaining some of those things that you had going on, kind of what came up for you, what was going on, and out of it, or might still be in it?
Yeah. So like I said, I was kind of climbing, getting better, doing well. And then I started a simple Pilates beginners workout class on my phone in the privacy of my home. And for those of you who don't know, like exercise has been this weird thing in my life lately where, like, you know, Mike and I, we played soccer our entire lives. I played at the collegiate level. Exercise was like my medicine. And now for the past year, my body has been reacting really just not well. It's really adverse reaction to exercise. So I started with some walking and I walk my dog, but it took me a while to be able to even do that. And then I got to the point last week where I was like, wow, I'm doing well. Let me like add something new in because maybe I can move into the next phase of exercise, which I just want to. My goal isn't to be the fittest girl out there and like chiseled. It's just like, let me have a strong core and strong muscles, right? Like gain some of that strength. So that was my intention going into it. And I did 2 days. It was very simple. And then within an hour, and then into the entire rest of the week. So that happened Monday. By Tuesday, like afternoon, I was like on the couch with a migraine, stimuli, any kind of stimulus. So it could be like phone, TV, sound, um, like cooking in the kitchen, like the simplest things that you don't really think about, music, were just kind of setting off these little signals in my body. And I was just having a tough time without having any auras. So I started having more auras, which for me are like a tingling sensation in my face, and they're almost like this warning signal, like, "Hey, you need to like really figure it out, or else we're gonna have a seizure here." And so over the course of the week, it just kind of kept coming at me, and I was trying my best to get better, if you will, but it sometimes just takes you out and takes time to reboot. So I just started walking again. That happened last week. I just started walking again yesterday morning, slower, shorter spans of time. But right now, that's just one of the obstacles that I'm going through. And a big part of it is that my craniosacral fluid, which this is only because I do craniosacral therapy that I know this, but it is just so stagnant. It almost like stops moving. And I know that's like very foreign language, so I won't even get into that today, but it's just basically the body's not in rhythm, in sync. It's just kind of all over the place, and the electrical activity is just kind of firing. So that's where I was at. And then I've been able to kind of get back on track this week, but it didn't come without some hard conversations, some hard like mental blocks of, am I ever going to get better? Right. Like those thoughts that we kind of struggle with. So, yeah, I hope that
Sure.
was okay.
No, yeah, and Paige, I appreciate you being vulnerable and explaining, kind of what was going on. I think it'd be as much as you would feel comfortable kind of discussing. I think it'd be important to kind of talk through or allow us to kind of understand what happens in those kinds of moments. What are some of those conversations that you have? How do you pull yourself kind of out of that? What worked for you to get you back to a place where you're actually able to sit down and do this podcast today?
You're right. It is important to talk about it. I think there are a number of things that I've learned, and it's taken me a long time to learn them because like we've had this conversation, Mike, where like I was diagnosed when I was 8 years old, so I didn't know what I needed. Like my parents took care of what I needed in terms of, let's make sure she gets enough sleep, let's make sure she's hydrated, and pushing all the triggers that cause a seizure. They would like really make sure that I was staying on top of those things, and that was so helpful because I didn't know any better and I didn't know what I really needed. And to be honest with you, I didn't really regard what I needed until I was like through college. Like it was um almost like an ignorance is bliss style of a thing. But then it gets to the point where it's like, no, this is your lifestyle. And now like you can't avoid stress. Like for me, stress is one of the number one triggers. My parents and my family did an amazing job at like keeping stress low around me. But then it gets to the reality where, okay, I'm an adult. We own a house. I'm married. We have a dog. We would love to start a family one day. And like all of that and also working, like it all comes with stress. So um kind of managing those stressors, I've just noticed they build up in my body a lot, so my body is taking on that stress now, and I really need to kind of keep all of that in check and also give myself the grace that like my body isn't, well, it's not the same as when I was 20 or like 18 years old. Like I'm 10 years older than that now. And not that I'm old, but like I can't expect my body to recover as quickly or do the same things that it did. So I think there is that giving myself that grace, or allowing the grace of God to like help me through it, where I have to be more patient. I have to make sure that I'm diligent about those like stressors. So hydration, my responsibility. Getting good sleep, my responsibility. Everything, right? Like everything's my responsibility. It has been for a while, but now that I've gone through this like really difficult year of transition, like this past year has been so difficult that now it's really putting it into perspective of like, okay, you really need to take care of yourself. And then at the same time, there's this balance of like, don't let it overtake your life. Like, make sure that it also still stays just one part of who you are, and it's not causing extra fear. It's not causing you to feel less than, or like all those like thoughts that can bubble up. Like I've always lived like I've been no different than anyone else. The only thing is I could potentially have a seizure, right? But now there's like a little bit more to that narrative that has been almost like negative, and I feel like that I just want to call it fear. Like I feel like the fear of like, okay, what if I didn't do the things I needed to do? What if I do have a seizure? What are the repercussions for that? That's a lot more pressure. It's like I'm in a pressure cooker and I need to release like that pressure so that I can just be human and accept that like this is a part of my life. You're going to get the hang of it. You're also going to make mistakes. So something might happen, and that's okay. And to have that narrative, it just takes a lot of time to work it into your system and into your knit, like, right? Like we do narrative therapy, we do like, it takes a while to like kind of untrain the thoughts that I've built up to be, if I have a seizure, then I've failed. Like that's the narrative that I realize I've started. Or then if I have a seizure, then I'm going to disappoint Michael. I'm going to disappoint my family. I'm going to disappoint myself. Like if I have a seizure, then we might not be able to have a family. I mean, there's like endless things that are negative that could fill those blanks. And I need to be able to come to a place of total acceptance of and love for my body, whether it's physical in terms of like what you see or what you don't see, which is epilepsy, what we're talking about. If I don't come to that acceptance piece, then I don't think I can ever have actual peace in my body and in my mind. That was a little tangential, but yes, that is what's been going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, Paige, there's a lot there. There's a
Yeah.
lot, and some of the things that I picked out of that, and it was the ongoing acceptance that you talked about, accepting your body physically, mentally, all the things, as well as relationships you were touching on a little bit with like your parents and your family support system as well as your husband. Um, how has that played a role? I mean, obviously, you're talking over the span of 20 something years, but how has that played a role in your journey?
Yeah. So we get into support systems, which I think will be really cool to talk about today. Um, I think it's really cool to start with this story because as I just told you, I have this narrative that I'm working on. We're trying to reframe it. We're trying to get the gears going in a different direction. Um, but I realized, so the other day, I was right. I was having this really bad week last week in terms of just having a lot of symptoms. And one of those nights, I really thought I was going to have a seizure, like a breakthrough seizure, full on. And it's been a year, which I'm like so grateful for. In like a few weeks, it'll be a year. And, you want that momentum to continue. And there's a lot of like, just I don't know. There's just some like you don't want to have one, and like the human part of me just kicked into that fight or flight response of like, what if I have a seizure? And so I started getting a little bit anxious about it. Michael, my husband, and I were watching a show. We love Survivor, and so I just said like, listen, I got to go to bed. So we turned it off. And then I just expressed to him, "Hey, I really feel awful and I feel like I might have a seizure tonight." And then it kind of just came out and he sat next to me and it was going to be okay kind of thing. And I realized that the main one of the main reasons that I didn't wanna have a seizure was because I didn't wanna disappoint him or disappoint my family or myself. It wasn't necessarily that I was afraid of the seizure so much, it was more of the fear of letting people down and letting someone else down. And it came out of my mouth and I was like, "Whoa, that's like a big breakthrough moment." Like, if you're in therapy and you come up with something like that, therapists were like, "Yeah, baby, let's go." Right? So this came out and it was like I had said it to him like, "I'm gonna just am I gonna disappoint you if this happens tonight?" And I got super choked up, and I know that I had done everything I could to prevent it. Like, I was hydrated, I took a nap that day, I had it was only that I had done those dang Pilates classes that was, like, causing this reaction, and he sat down next to me and said, "Paige, you're not disappointing me if this happens. You've done everything you can." And then we said a prayer together and he reminded me of my faith and he's like, "You have to walk your walk, walk the talk." Like what's that phrase? Why is it like slipping my mind? Like he's like, "You talk about this a lot with your clients or with people who have epilepsy or chronic conditions. Like this is part of your life and like you have to lean into your faith right now and follow that." And so we had a good like little laugh too, like we made some light of it and I was perfectly fine through the night. But I realized that like he almost like him giving me permission to have this episode if it was going to happen, which thankfully it didn't, but like him just kind of giving me this permission of like it's going to be okay if you do and it's going to be okay if you don't. And this is part of your life and that's okay. It was just this huge relief. Like it was like I almost and I need to work on this, but it's almost like I needed his permission that like he wasn't going to be disappointed and that we were going to be okay if it did happen. And that's when I realized how much pressure I was actually putting on myself. But I also have to like give him so much credit and I thanked him so much for this, especially over the past week was he wasn't anxious about it. He didn't come at it with this like, "Okay, what do we do?" Da, 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 like this big energy. He came at it with like, "It's gonna be okay." And calmly and brought this like really beautiful energy to something that can be very scary. And that was the exact type of support that I needed. And I think that it made me realize, and I know through our conversations, you and I talk about like what is helpful when it comes to relationships and support because there are things that help us and then there are things that don't really help us. And so when I realized that that was so helpful and it took this pressure off, I was like, wow, it's really worth exploring this topic. And that we also need to advocate for ourselves because if something isn't being said well or isn't, like isn't helpful for us, it can increase our symptoms or increase our anxiety around them or whatever might come of that. So I'm gonna like turn it over to you now, Mikey, and just kind of like how does communication and your relationships, like how is that helpful for you? Or maybe something that's not helpful, like how does that work for you? What's successful for you?
Yeah, I want to start off by just saying what a beautiful kind of story that is that you had with you and Michael. And I think it's extremely, extremely powerful that you guys were able to have a situation like that come up and navigate it in the way that you needed in that moment. Um, Got to give a lot of props to Michael because I think you guys have obviously been together for some time, and I'm sure it's evolved the way that he has and does now, and will continue to support you. But kudos to him for just kind of knowing what you need in that moment, because it worked. It
Yeah.
worked.
And you
And
know what? That's a really good point because having a partner that supports you is really important, first of all. But and I know you do too. But like also a partner that listens to what you're asking for and what you do need, because there have been times in the past where like he might get a little anxious or like whatever, because that's the human reaction to something that's scary. Seizures are life threatening. So like it is something that I know he thinks about, and I'm just so grateful that he's listened to what helps me and what energy is needed in those times. And he is like, I mean, we've been together 10 years as of like last month. So like it's just kind of a cool like milestone too, that like we've reached this level of communication, and obviously we're going to have to continue that and keep working at it. But I can't emphasize how important it is to have a partner who's supportive and listens, like really like, and also we listen to them because that's another, like it's not just one-sided, but yeah, what might be helpful for us.
Mhm.
So yeah. Yep.
And I'm sure that's evolved.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
evolved from when you guys first started dating and then got married and now have been married for however long you guys have been. It's changed, and I think it's the same with, partners, friendships, parents, siblings, anybody that you have in your corner as your support system. It evolves and it changes, because just as you described before, Paige, you've been living with it since you were 8. And so when that 8-year-old girl was dealing with seizures and dealing with, all the things that come of having epilepsy at that moment, your parents needed to take everything on. They needed to be that support system, probably overwhelmingly. And then that changes once you go to college and then you are living on your own and then you have a partner. It all changes.
Yeah.
uh, and I think it's just so important for, the support systems that might be listening to this podcast, or, the people going through it, that having those conversations and communicating it effectively to those people is a key in your journey.
And to add to it, like calling it a journey like you are, it's not that like it's from bad to good, or we're not labeling anything good, bad, right, or wrong. It's more of that openness to evolution with transitions and different times in our lives, and as we move through it, our condition might change or our situation might change, whatever it is, that we're all open to moving through it together and communicating together for a successful outcome as the person with the condition or the caretaker. Like everybody needs to feel good and comfortable, and that open communication and evolution of that is just so imperative. That's just incredibly important.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's
Yeah, it's hard.
it's an awkward, weird conversation to have. Um, and it's hard for the support system to understand exactly what we need, because sometimes we struggle to even articulate it.
That's
And for me, as just kind of an example, you and I have talked about it before. Um, when I was dealing with, one of the heights of my condition being ulcerative colitis, and I was, in the hospital and really, really sick. I remember it like it was yesterday. My dad just sat next to me, and him and I love cars. That's something we bond over. And he just started showing me these like Jeeps. And I was like, oh my God, like those are so cool. And like there was stick shift, there was automatic. And he's like, well, which one would you want? And we just started talking, and it just got my mind off of in the moment. And I look back at that, I'm like, wow, like that was so helpful for me in the moment, because I just needed that. Like I just needed someone to have a conversation with me that's normal, that's not talking about my condition. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Oh my God, this must be so overwhelming. But instead, just like as if it's nothing, talking about Jeeps. Um, and, obviously nothing came of the Jeep story, but it taught me that for my condition and what works for me is not an overbearing, fixation on the illness and making sure everything's right, because I'm already doing that myself in my own head.
yeah.
I don't need other people to put that on as well. Um, and it's hard. it's hard to communicate that to people because in the moment I didn't know that that's what I needed or wanted or that was a good way to support me. It just felt good, and I can look back at it now as a therapist and realize, oh wow, that really, good way to help me through a moment like that. Um, but the support system and the relationships that we have with our condition is something that I really think is so important to talk about.
Definitely. And I really like that story because I think there is that element of we are going through something, yes. But do we also want to hold on or like keep that sense of normalcy too? Yes. Like we're still a human being. We're still like, we still have the wants and desires of the human being. That's like, that is who we are. Or the um maybe wants and desires is not isn't the best way to put it, but like we still desire to be treated as the person that we are, not the condition. And that brings in that element of the human, like being a human, right? Like, yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. And I want to put it out there too, like this is just what works for us. It could be different for other people going through it. Some people might want, you know, more of an involvement in their condition where they have their parents, their partners, their friends, asking them, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because that might be helpful to them. Um, the type of people that I think we are, Paige, it's kind of like pick yourself up by our bootstraps. We're getting through this, and I don't need you to feel bad for me because we're getting through it together. Um, and that's just again the type of people that we are. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah, but I also think that brings up the point of seasons. Like there are different seasons in our life. Like I know that there have been certain times where people need to be a little bit more aware of how I'm doing. So I might update them. But I've also had that conversation of like, I'll let you know when I need help or like and thank you so much for offering, but I'll let you know when I need that so that it's not that constant uh conversation like you're saying. But there are different seasons where like it might really be helpful, especially at first, for someone to say like, how are you doing, like I need, and that sort of thing. But then there are other seasons where we want to continue to grow as autonomous individuals, adults, and that requires us taking responsibility for our bodies a little more, maybe communicating with our doctors, with our partners and our families and anyone else who's supporting us, that might be our responsibility. If that's for our listeners, if that's a possibility for you to be that main driver of taking responsibility for your condition. Um, but it's interesting because this just popped into my head. I had a beautiful client of mine bring up a this very similar thing about communication and how there were just people, it was a new diagnosis, right? When we're like newly diagnosed with anything, of course people are like, what do you need? How are you feeling? Blah, 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 right? Because so if you're a listener who's newly diagnosed with something, any kind of chronic condition, or you've been living with it for over 20 years like myself or somewhere in the middle, like those different seasons of life call for different times and different things. But this person had been talking about like, I'm okay. Like I just want um people to stop asking me, "Are you okay?" And like I totally get that. It hit me in my core. Because we've all got, like, if you're going through something like this, you've probably gone through a season like that where it's just a lot. Um, and like I know after my surgeries, it was a lot of that. So, but it was so great how we were able to kind of work together to figure out what would work for you. And it was amazing because this person went home, had these conversations, and the family system's working together so well. And I just love the fact that it all came down to the advocacy. So her advocating for her needs, and then the people in her life supporting her and actually, following through with some of those things that could be helpful. So it's kind of that like two-way street or like reciprocation. that needs to happen. And then she also opened up and said, "What do you need? I know this is hard for you too. So, is there something that I can help reassure you with or whatever?" And that was so helpful because that gave the caregiver a voice. So, I think it's also important for us to remember that when we have our needs that we would love, but how can we also put our caregiver or our partner or family at ease by giving them a voice too? So,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've gone through anything like that or experienced that on your side too, Mikey or Mike.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, and I love that story. And it made me even think of, um, like more recently when I kind of did have that obstacle roadblock, still kind of working through it, um, with, having more inflammation. My mind instantly goes a million miles an hour. So I go, what do I need to do? What do I need to fix? What do I need to change? I'll do anything and everything.
Yeah.
And so in the moment, something for me is like I'm switching right now to an anti-inflammatory diet. I don't even know what that means. I was just like, I heard it. I'm just going to do it. Like that sounds amazing. And in that moment, what did Bella do? My partner, my fiance, she went on Pinterest instantly for that week. Every single day, she chose a recipe that was anti-inflammatory. She went grocery shopping, got all anti-inflammatory foods, and we just made dinners. And like like looking at it now, I'm like, that is exactly what I needed in that moment. Like I know I'm going a million miles an hour, I'm trying all these different things, but she was just like, all right, like let's do it. And she jumped on, like she doesn't have to do an anti-inflammatory diet, but she was just hopped on. I was like, yeah, like, let's do it. And so that was so helpful for me. And I'm so appreciative because rather than her being, upset for me and like, okay, like I'm so sorry, like what do we need to do? She just hopped on the train and was like, yeah, like let's do it. Like we're doing it.
Ah,
um
go Bella. I love and I love the smile on your face right now because it's so, like, telling of of her nature, and I love that she was able to pick up on how you needed to be supported, not asking 1,000 questions or giving you that, like, real sympathy, which, like, we all could use a hug, but at the point that you and I are at, we're like, "Let's, like, to go into action," and she helped you with that action, like, look at her. Yes.
yeah. And it reminded me of to add on to the story that you had just said, how our relationship and her support for me has changed. Because in the beginning of my diagnosis, and we had just started dating when it happened, and so I was in and out of hospitals, and so very overwhelming, and she was upset. But I remember her and I had gotten, to a point where she had asked me like, I don't like, what do you need from me? Like how do I support you? um and I just told her, like, I just need you to be there. Like, just there, and not ask, a bunch of questions, but just be there for me. Um, and here she is now, just being an absolute rock star, like getting in an anti-inflammatory, grocery run for a week. And she's constantly cognizant of like, we're in an environment, like, okay, you need to go to the bathroom, like let's go, like we'll find it right now, like let's just do. um and it's so helpful for me, but it also took time, like it took an evolution, because that's natural, like that's just how things go. um
Oh,
so
I'm, like, loving this because 'cause we're just like, "Go to our partners." Like, look at them go.
Sure.
And it's true. I mean, even from the very this was, like, very early in my relationship with Michael, where I was going through brain surgeries, and I had 4 brain surgeries over the course of a month, and he was in law school and driving from Connecticut to Boston every day for, like, the month just to see me for like 10 minutes. But one thing that got me through this really difficult time, and like when you're having brain surgery, everything's kind of fuzzy, but it's all painful. And like there's just, and my surgery might be different than anybody else's experience, of course. So it's like, it's all different. But one thing that I remember that was just so beautiful was one day he put me in like a a wheelchair, and I wasn't allowed out of the room for a long time because I was hooked up to a bunch of stuff. And then there was that one day, and he put me in the wheelchair, and we like ran down the hallway, and we raided the snack room, and we got all the ice cream, and then we came back, like, and came back to the room. And like, that is just one of those highlights where like people can bring light into a seemingly really dark or difficult situation. And so I think for our listeners too, if you're in a difficult space with communication or how you're being supported, because I've heard that, we know that that's been true for us, but also like as social workers, we see that a lot, even in people who don't have chronic conditions. Communication with family, supporters, partners, friends, it's difficult. So just to kind of, I feel like, give some hope here is that it doesn't happen overnight. Holding on to the glimmers of the good is a really great thing. Praising your caretakers for the things they do well goes a long way. And not being afraid to have those conversations of, hey, and it's not you did this wrong. Like we can't do that. Like that because everybody, at least in I know our situation, is well meaning. Everybody's trying to be helpful. But to come at it with this, if you're listening to this and you want improvement in your relationships or your communication, I feel like Mikey and I can both say like we've been where you are. And it takes time and practice, but continuing to model and communicate. So model what you need, model how you would want to be treated, right? And then also being able to communicate that in a way that is, I'm so appreciative of the effort and the love that you're showing me through this. I know it's well meaning. I would love to try fill in the blank. Like, I'd love to try communicating this way. This would be so helpful. And then again, remembering to open up that space for the caregiver of like, is there something I can do for you to support you better? Because maybe it might be that you text your parents that you've taken your medicine, like, because they're concerned about that, or whatever your thing is, or it's like, done, like check mark, whatever it is that you're sending, just something. That's just like one little example of how sometimes we can help others and then everybody's at ease. I'm not saying that's the right answer for everybody, but I hope that makes sense generally. You can probably sum it up better than me, Mike.
I think if you are the person with the chronic illness that's struggling right now with relationships or communication and you are looking to have that conversation, um, leading with gratitude, I think, is for me the key. Thank you for supporting me, being there for me, and can we try this?
Yes.
Because our support systems are also going through it. It is hard to see someone that you love and care about not be feeling well and be sick and be in a hospital room. It's not easy for the support system. It's not. And so, if the least thing that we can do as the people with the chronic illness or condition, wherever you're at, is lead with gratitude to open up that conversation, I think it makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
My final 2 cents.
Yeah, you nailed it. And obviously, right, like we'll probably have more episodes in relationships because there's so much complexity to it, so many different and also also to give ourselves grace because if you snap at someone, like it's okay. Like we can recover from that because everybody has those weak moments where we're like in distress and like we are just not doing well and we're worried or we're scared or we're fearful. So if you're having those negative emotions, like it's okay. Like that's it, right? That's okay too. I feel like there's so much more to this conversation that we could just like dive into for hours, which we will. Maybe there'll be good part two, part three.
Absolutely.
But that's a great, I love that. Let's end on that, Mikey. Let's let's lead with gratitude. I'm gonna focus on that this week for sure.
Myself as well. I've been setting an intention during my mornings when I go on my morning walks. Set an intention for the day, and one of the things that has been coming up is leading my day with gratitude. Just being thankful for where I'm at, thankful for my condition, and thankful that I'm in a position to be able to be here and have these conversations with you, because the work that we do and even this podcast, I think, is so important for people. So,
Totally. Yes, I love that. And when you say grateful for the condition, that that hits because I said it almost just in a little bit of a different way last week, where I was like, and this is like so personal, but I'm going to share it anyways. I said to Michael, I said, if I had the chance to like live life again and not have epilepsy, but I wouldn't have the parents I had or the family I had. I wouldn't have met you or be with the partner that with him. I would never choose to like not have the condition. I would do it all the same again. And I think there's something really I feel so grateful for that. Like, I don't think I don't know if everyone can say that, but I do feel like there's that gratitude portion of these people care about me. We've gone through difficult times. We're going to continue to from time to time, but we're doing it together.
yeah, it has in some ways brought me closer to the people that I care and love about, my family, my partner, my brother, my cousins, my aunts, everybody that supported me. It's brought me closer to them. And for that, like you were saying, I am very, very grateful for. Um, Not to say that it couldn't have happened without it, but it's led me to where I'm at now. So
Yeah.
we're going to leave our listeners with that. Lead with gratitude.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I agree with you. All right. Well, we will see you all next week. And if you have any questions or comments or want to reach out to us, please do. See the link in, I guess, our bio for this podcast. And we'd love to hear from you and touch on different topics that you might be interested in. And we will see you then.
See you next week.
Signing off. Bye.